Hi, it's Rupert Hine here from Action Coach near Kinross, and I'm joined today by Clark Bremner of Clark Bremner Associates. Welcome, Clark.
Hello.
So Clark, you've had a bit of an evolution over the last 20 years in terms of moving on that journey into entrepreneurship, setting up your own business. What happened? Well, first of all, what is it you do, and how did you come to do it?
Oh, it goes back to 20 years ago when I was in a full-time position in planning and development with the Church of Scotland, looking at social care development. And I became aware that there was going to be a growing need for community services, and in particular, social spaces. That's the key word I use, social spaces. And it became one of those things. I was working on projects and I began to realize I needed to go self-employed in order to have the freedom to explore this further and to develop it further. And when I became self employed, I describe it as falling off a cliff. I immediately became unemployed. No one wanted anything to do with me. And I realized that I didn't have the skill sets that I really thought I had. I thought I was a consultant. No, I was very quickly unemployed. And that started a journey of learning, of going to various college courses for about 7 years. And it's quite interesting that it was 7 years at college until someone caught me and said, no, you're a graduate, you should be at university. And that led to 7 years of masters at university. And so for the last 7 years, I've been away from university and college, and I've been more a self directed learner. I've been now looking at the things I want to learn, but it's still about how do we bring these projects together? How do we make it happen? And it's evolved from simply social space into housing or accommodation. My third master's was community learning and development, and I learned there the importance of language. It's all about the words. When you say housing to people, they have an image of what housing is. So when you say accommodation, well, that opens things up. That could be hotel, that could be camping, that could be any number of things. And that's the kind of evolution that I've had over the last 20 years. So where I am now is I'm much more comfortable in who I am and what I've learned. I've learned a great deal. I have three postgrads, I have a number of qualifications from college. But the thing is, more what I've learned for myself as what I would call a self directed learner.
So if you go back to the early days,
Hmm.
you've gone from a stable, secure job.
Yes.
You've resigned from that. You've become self-employed. You've realized that that means the equivalent of being unemployed. How did you move from that unemployed, self-employed space into becoming the business owner and delivering projects?
Well, I think for me, it goes to the word entrepreneur. So I understand that there's an economist, I always forget which one, is it Schumpeter? Someone has described entrepreneurship as being a magician standing on stage who produces things out of nothing. So I've learned that in becoming an entrepreneur, I have embarked on an enormous learning curve. And yes, there are people that are with you along the journey, but there are a lot of people that are not there, and you have to find them out or you have to learn it for yourself. And so the entrepreneurship is really about having a grounding in being comfortable in who you are yourself, um, taking the time to learn, learning that you're not always getting it right. It's about persistence, tenacity, but it's about being able to accept when things are just not right and you need to go back. You know what I mean? It's a reflectivity. Again, I learned in my third master's. So it's about taking the time to reflect on where I am, what's got me so far. And so for the last 20 years, it's been a bit like that, stop and start, or emergence is my new word that I would use these days. Emergence theory is the thing that I'm very interested in. And that is where things are more catalyst. So there's an opportunity to try things out, see if it fits, see if it works. And yeah, it takes time. You can't rush it. It's, I guess, a bit like gardening. At the end of the day, you choose what you're going to do, but things will emerge the way they're going to emerge, and you kind of learn from that, and you gain your skill sets. I don't. Malcolm Gladwell described the 10,000-hour rule about to become, proficient. So you become comfortable being the novice at the beginning, not knowing things. But what I can say after 20 years of being in business is that I've learned an awful lot, and I'm comfortable with learning, very, very comfortable with learning. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of uncertainty. And the bonuses are enormous in terms of being able to learn, for myself, having the freedom to go and learn what I want. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because so I quite often talk about that journey in terms of creating success in your life starts with the dream. You had
Yes.
that dream at the start that you were going to be able to take the that social inclusion, those social community concepts on. And once you've got that dream, moving that into a set of goals, which is really about becoming specific, but you still have no idea how you're going to deliver them in most cases. Because the next
Yes.
step is all about doing the learning to work out how you can do it, then create the plans and then take the action. And
Mhm.
and so you're in a space where you're taking projects and you're helping them to realize their potential. So
Yes.
what are the things that you've learned about being able to take somebody else's concept and bring it to fruition?
Well, I guess what I've learned is that it's not linear. It's not straightforward. There's a lot more issues there than you would realize. There's a phrase which I have copied here, which is one makes the road by walking on it. And that is the kind of um, pragmatic role that I found myself in. So I don't beat myself up so much now about development. And I was lucky to have 5 years with the Church of Scotland in planning and development, where I learned there's many, many reasons why a project will not go to fruition. It will not happen. It will get hijacked. Something will happen along the way with the best will in the world and the best of intentions. But what I have learned is the skill sets that help to bring things through different stages. And I'm quite comfortable to bring something to a particular stage and then leave it there if that's where it's going to sit, because it may have to sit before it then moves on to the next stage. It may need another partner. It might need other information. It might need other funding. It might need a business plan that makes sense to a funder or something like that. But these are all, again, opportunities for learning. That's the thing that's changed for me, Rupert, is I see everything now as a challenge, but it's an opportunity for learning. So I don't get beaten up over it. I don't lose sleep over it. I will lose sleep if I'm trying to continually try and work something out. That's just the nature of my brain. If I give myself a problem, my brain will try and solve the problem. But I've also learned to work with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And while you were speaking, another word that came to mind was the word distillation, distilling. So that again, what are the essential parts? What are the things which are absolutely necessary for a project? And what are the things which would be nice if we had them, but they're not that important? So maybe like prioritizing. But again, it all goes back to the learning. And I mentioned that I'm very interested, very fond of emergence theory, which is all about at the edge of chaos, which is where the learning and the opportunities are, but it's about the learning. And that's what I feel I've learned, is that there are people who want to learn and there's people who don't want to learn. There's people who just want to see a project emerge and happen. And that was the same when I was with the Church of Scotland. If I turned up someplace as planning and development, everybody thought, oh, wow, something's going to wait to happen. But they didn't understand the process I was involved in. I might be exploring the feasibility of a project, but for different reasons, it might not connect. It might not happen. So it's kind of learning with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's interesting the way that ideas develop,
Mm-hmm.
and that whole concept that really out of all the experiences you have, there's really two outcomes. There's success, you
Mm-hmm.
find the right thing and you're able to implement it, or there's learning because something hasn't gone quite as you expected it to. And I suppose it came home to me. I was fortunate enough to work with some of the best scientists in the world for a while, and talking to guys who'd been working in their case on vaccines against tuberculosis
Mm-hmm.
in cattle, and they've been working for 20 years and still didn't have a good vaccine. And yet, whereas a lot of people are sort of saying, well, how does it feel to have 20 years of failure? So, no, we're
Mm-hmm.
20 years further forward. We're 20 years
Yes.
closer to the solution.
Yes.
We haven't found it yet, but we're 20 years closer. And it's that different way of looking at things, which I think so interesting.
Yes.
So you've embarked on a journey built out of a passion for social inclusion, social space, social community.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about that mission that really engages you?
It's the sheer scope of opportunity that it offers. Um, I think back to, I heard about the Enlightenment in Scotland, and it seemed that that was made possible because in Edinburgh, Newtown, there was more opportunities for people to bump into each other. And so maybe what I'm saying is, I want to create spaces where people can bump into each other. I want the spaces where people can express an opinion, express a thought, express an aspiration. That's probably the key word for me. I believe that in Scotland, there is or could be a great deal of aspiration that has not yet been tapped into. And the way to do that is by creating the spaces in which people can come together for networking, for learning, but for just sharing the art of conversation, the art of hearing another's opinion. There's a book by Anton Sean called The Business of Conferencing, which I read when I was at college. And conferencing is just what you and I are doing right now. And then, as other people will either look at this or form their own ideas or take ideas from it, that is what the power of conferencing is about, the power of a conversation. And in the past, when people had horses and coaches, they would stop at inns while the horses were changed. And these were coffee houses. And that's again where things were exchanged, ideas. What do you do? Oh, I've never thought of that. That's a great idea. But we're not creating an environment in Scotland at the moment for ideas to come together. Perhaps we are in some places, but sometimes these I feel are managed, whereas I feel I'm more interested in the spontaneity. I'm interested in the chaos, but I'm not interested in chaos as in everything goes wrong. I'm interested in the thing that, so what lies ahead of us? What's the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that's going to happen in Scotland? And Scotland is an amazing place for aspiration. And I really believe that it's well worth my while exploring how to do it. And to take your point, I might not accomplish it. I might not, but I'm enjoying the journey.
So I mean, the whole idea of things like chaos theories is fascinating, isn't it? The
Yes.
idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon rainforest can create a storm on the other side of the planet, and how we can use that within our world of business. So
Yes.
that whole art of conferencing,
Mhm.
how have you managed to use that to help you build your business?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I'm at a point in my life where the internet is very, very strong. And I'm plugged into a lot of different emails that come in. My junk mail is probably the best place for me to find ideas. The things that are coming in through there, I will look at them, and I will sign up for things on newsletters and so on. And it's a kind of prospecting in the sense that I don't have to be everywhere. My computer and now my phone is really helpful to me because it will feed me things. It will give me ideas. The news is another great source where I see patterns or trends or things emerging. I'm using that word again, emergence. What am I learning from that? What's the opportunity for that? But I'm on a shoestring budget. I can't go everywhere. But again, I'm fortunate that I'm now a pensioner. So I can get on a bus and go to Glasgow for £1 return. So if I want to go to Glasgow or Edinburgh, I can do that. But I'm going to need to go a bit further afield to perhaps Birmingham and London, where there are bigger conferences. If that makes sense to you, that the pool I'm working in here is not as big as the pool I could be working in if I were to go further afield. But it still comes back to my knowing where should I go and when should I not. You know, where am I going to conference? Who am I going to speak to? Can't speak to everybody. So how do I do that? Well, part of it is just by being in the space, and then people are attracted to you or they're not. And I'm happy with that. I'm okay with that. I'm quite happy sitting in a conference on my own because I feel, well, no one's really interested in what I've got to offer. But occasionally I'll meet someone who is, and then we'll maybe have some ideas or so on. So you see again how this distillation goes. It's kind of stop start. It's kind of forward and back. It's kind of round and about. It's up and it's down. But when you're kind of going with that roller coaster, you're comfortable with it because you think, no, I know what this is. I know what this dynamic is. I can work with this. But I'm learning, as I keep coming back to. I'm learning. And that's the one responsibility I have, is the learning. Have I gone to the right place as a conference? If it's wrong, then I won't go back. You know what I mean? I choose to be
Yeah.
where I want to be with my time, Rupert. I don't have all the time in the world, and I don't have the time to swan around. I remember getting a job with the Church of Scotland when in my interview, and I said to the director of social work, and I said, "So you don't want me out there swanning around?" He says, "No, that's exactly what we want you doing, because it's that collision, it's that being out there to bump into the people that I don't know I'm actually looking for."
Yeah.
This sounds terrible to be saying this on a video, but
No, well,
that
it's
is,
it's it's a bit like the whole concept of leadership by wandering about.
yes,
Actually, if you've got a big team, there's real value. I was visiting somebody last week, and we went for a look around their premises, and the value that the team were getting just because there's the boss calling in who knows all about them, they know about him, they're having a conversation, little things are getting picked up. It again, it's the opportunities on the fringes of the discussion. And I
yes,
always forget the exact quote, but that thing that luck is really about having having the presence of mind to spot the opportunities, being open
yeah,
to them, and then being
yes,
and just in being able to take the action on the back of it. Um,
yes.
we're
But it's
we're
fun. It's a
yeah,
lot of fun. It's
yeah,
it's it's not as terrible as it might sound to other people watching this video. It's like it's an adventure.
yeah,
Being an
yeah.
entrepreneur,
Life's not about the destination. It's about the fun of
no,
getting there.
yeah, wherever there is.
Yes.
And realizing sometimes that where I think I should be isn't where I should be. And then I learned that, and then I think, oh, right, I need to be somewhere else.
So
Um,
so if you think back to that
mm,
point 20 years ago where you were moving from moving from the world of employment into the world of
yes,
entrepreneurship,
yeah.
what's the main piece of advice? If there's just one piece of advice you could give yourself back then, what would it
Mm.
be?
I guess it would be prepared to learn, because that's what immediately happened. I was very lucky that by becoming unemployed, I went on a program which took me to learn CAD, computer aided drafting, and I would have never thought about learning CAD. But I now have computer aided drafting, which means I can draw up something. So I guess my advice to myself then would be, trust your intuition, go with the flow. You're not going to fail. You're going to learn, and you're going to learn that you've gone down a dead end. when I was in planning and development with the Church of Scotland, we all met. There was 5 of us across Scotland, and we met in Pitlochry to look at a project. And one person said to me, "How do you know not to go down dead ends?" And I was saying, "Well, because I've been doing this for 5 years. You soon learn where a project is not going to go anywhere. Otherwise, what have you been doing for 5 years? I mean,
Yeah.
goodness, you know what I mean? You get and there's another thing about consultancy. The first line I read about consultancy: if a project's not going well, it will not go well. Stop it. Get out. And I've applied that all the time. If I find a conversation, Rupert, that is not meeting, you know what I mean? What's it? The red flags, or there's the feeling, the gut feeling. No, I stop. I leave it alone, because that's what I'm learning. I mean, I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong, it'll come back to me.
Yeah.
Um, you know what I mean? But I still trust my intuition. I still trust that I'm going to make. I have to take accountability for my own decisions and the things that I'm doing. That's what being an entrepreneur is all about.
There's some really interesting stuff. There's a good book, Sources of Power,
All right.
and it's all about decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And most people start out thinking, well, there's broadly 2 types of decision making. There's that
Mm-hmm.
very logic driven, we've got 3 options, pros of option A, cons of it, work out, which on the balance, across them all, which one we do. Really good for decisions that you've got plenty of time to invest in making. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got that gut instinct piece. Yeah, it just feels right. And it has its place, but for really important decisions, it lacks something.
Yeah.
And there's actually a third sort, which it almost feels like what you were alluding to there, which is the way people work under pressure. So particularly people like emergency services workers,
Mm-hmm.
fireground commanders, military officers in conflict situations, things like that. And it's about pattern recognition.
Yes.
And it relies on the experience to say, I may not have seen this situation before, but I've seen something like it.
Yes.
I recognize the pattern, so I'm going to try this, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye on it, and I'll know if it's working or not because of my experience, and I'm prepared to adjust and adapt. Now, that sounds quite a long process. Of course, it's happening in a split second, because quite often the people making those decisions don't know why they're making them.
Yes.
But provided you've got the experience, it allows you to do it, which is back to your once you've been doing project management for a number of years, be able to
Yes.
look. It's been a fascinating conversation. I love the idea of keep an eye on the junk folder, because actually there's
Like
loads
it.
of ideas in there,
Yeah.
and just indulge in great conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, thank you very much, Clark, and best of luck with achieving that dream and getting more people in Scotland bumping into each other and
Yeah.
having the great conversations to drive society
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. That's the goal.